The scent of damp earth after a spring rain often carries me back to a particular morning, the kind where the world feels poised on the edge of blooming. I remember the gentle hum of the refrigerator, the faint clinking of porcelain as Alara, my adoptive mother, set out breakfast. My name is Lyndon, or it was for the 20 years I spent under their roof. That morning, my actual 20th birthday, held none of the usual quiet reverence. Instead, it was punctuated by Alara's crisp, almost brittle voice. "Lyndon," she began, her gaze fixed on the meticulous rows of files on the kitchen island. "We need to discuss a change in your living arrangements." Beside her, Arthur, my adoptive father, cleared his throat, a nervous habit that always signaled an impending storm. He fiddled with the buckle of his belt, a worn leather strap that had seen more practical use than affection. Arthur, a gentle, unassuming man who worked at the local botanical garden, was usually lost in his world of rare orchids and soil compositions. Alara, on the other hand, managed the accounts at a bustling city gallery, her life a tapestry woven with numbers and precise calculations. "Change?" I asked, a spoonful of oatmeal halfway to my mouth. A prickle of unease traced its way up my spine. Alara finally looked at me, her spectacles perched at the end of her nose. "The stipend from the Alabaster Grove Foundation concludes today, Lyndon. Upon your 20th birthday, as per the agreement." Arthur mumbled. "It was always the arrangement." "Arrangement?" I echoed, my voice thin. "What arrangement?" Alara removed her spectacles, cleaning them with a practiced motion. "When we took you in, Lyndon, as a ward of the state, there was a monthly provision. It was quite clear in the initial documentation." She gestured vaguely towards a locked, ornate cabinet in the living room, where such documents were always kept. "We fulfilled our obligations. Provided shelter, sustenance, education." The words hung in the air, heavy and cold. "Obligations. Your personal effects have been gathered," she continued, her voice unwavering. "They are in the utility room." She gestured towards a canvas duffel bag, a stark contrast against the pale cream walls. "Anything acquired during your stay here, of course, remains our property." My gaze fell upon the duffel bag, 2 decades of my life, neatly condensed into a single, unremarkable sack. My breath hitched. "You have until midday to depart," Alara stated, glancing at the antique clock on the mantel. "That allows ample time for arrangements." Arthur, finally finding his voice, albeit a fragile one, spoke up. "Alara, perhaps a few days, just to help Lyndon find his footing." Her eyes, usually serene like a still pond, hardened. "The quarterly payment for the gallery's lease is due, Arthur. We need to prepare the guest room for a new tenant this afternoon." A new tenant. The phrase twisted in my gut. My room. The sanctuary where I'd spent countless hours sketching, reading, dreaming. "You're renting out my room?" The realization hit me, a dull thud. "It was never your room, Lyndon," Alara corrected, her tone devoid of malice, simply stating a fact. "It was a space provided under the terms of our agreement." I stood there, a phantom of myself, in the kitchen where 20 years of meals had been consumed in polite silence. The same kitchen where I'd drawn countless crayon pictures for them, pictures that were never displayed, only neatly filed away in a designated box in the attic. "I have nowhere to go," I confessed, the words tasting bitter. "And barely any savings." Alara, ever prepared, produced a brochure from a drawer. "The Haven Collective, downtown. They assist young adults transitioning into independence." A shelter. The woman who had taught me to read, who had packed my school lunches with such efficiency, was now directing me to a shelter. "Please," I pleaded, my voice cracking, "just a week. I'll find work, I'll contribute." "Your hours at the local bookstore, Lyndon," she stated, her logical mind already dissecting my paltry income, "would not cover the market rate for rent in this neighborhood." She was right, of course. She was always right about the numbers. My meager savings, earmarked for a few art classes, wouldn't even cover a security deposit. Arthur finally rose, his face a mask of discomfort. "I'm heading to the gardens," he mumbled, grabbing his worn tweed jacket. He paused at the door, his hand on the cool brass knob. "Good luck, Lyndon." And then he was gone, the quiet thud of the door leaving me alone with Alara and her precise calculations, and the canvas bag containing all my worldly possessions. "The clock is ticking," Alara said, without looking up. I have a meeting at the gallery at 11. I walked to the utility room, lifted the duffel bag. It felt feather-light. 20 years, reduced to this. Inside, a few faded clothes, a sketchbook, my grandmother's old silver locket, a relic from the past I barely knew. Nothing from them. No photos, no mementos, no trace of a shared life. Was I ever anything to you? I asked, the words a raw whisper. In 20 years, was there ever a flicker of something beyond obligation? Alara finally met my gaze. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a tremor, a softening in her usually impassive eyes. But then she glanced at her wrist, a familiar, efficient movement. You were a responsibility we managed successfully. We provided for your needs, never faltered in our agreement with the foundation. That should be sufficient. It wasn't. It would never be sufficient. And as I stood there, holding the fragile remnants of my life, on the precipice of a world that suddenly offered no anchor, I understood. Some individuals are capable of raising a child for 2 decades, yet never truly see them as anything more than an entry in a ledger. Goodbye, Alara, I said, the word mother finally shed, like a heavy cloak I'd unknowingly carried. She was already back to her files, her neat, orderly life resuming its precise rhythm, the inconvenience of another's child now neatly concluded. Life in the quiet, tree-lined suburb of Elysian Heights, outside the bustling metropolis of Verdant City, was a study in beige. Alara, with her penchant for muted tones and minimalist design, ensured our home reflected an almost clinical order. Neutral palettes are timeless, she'd often say, as if color itself were an unnecessary indulgence. Arthur, in his gentle way, would simply nod, retreating into his world of botanical journals and the soft murmur of classical music. He was a caretaker at the famed Elysian Botanical Gardens, his hands more comfortable tending to delicate blossoms than navigating the complexities of human emotion. Alara, on the other hand, was the meticulous chief accountant at the Artisan's Canvas Gallery, her days a symphony of spreadsheets and financial forecasts. I was taken in at 6 months old. My early memories are a blend of hushed tones, the faint scent of lemon polish, and the unspoken rule of quietude. Alara kept all the foundation paperwork in a lacquered box in her study, a box I only ever saw opened for brief, clandestine moments. I sensed it held the secrets to my past, a past that remained a closed book. Arthur, in his quiet generosity, taught me practical skills: how to mend a leaky faucet, cultivate a rose bush, or identify the constellations on a clear night. A person needs to understand the world around them. Lyndon, he'd say, his voice a soft rustle of leaves. But there was always a distance, a carefully maintained boundary. His prized possession, a restored antique telescope, was always off limits. That's for focused observation, not idle curiosity. I realize now, it was never for my curiosity, because I was never truly his in the way he envisioned. My escape was art. The small, local library became my sanctuary, filled with books on painters, sculptors, and poets. I devoured stories of lives lived in vibrant hues, lives that defied the beige existence I knew. I sketched relentlessly, filling notebooks with charcoal portraits of strangers, landscapes from my imagination, anything to bring color into my world. At 16, I began working part-time at the Literary Nook, a charming independent bookstore owned by a kind, elderly woman named Mrs. Marlowe. She had a twinkle in her eye and a heart full of stories. "You have a gentle spirit, Lyndon," she'd often say, and a way with words, even the unspoken ones. My earnings, after Alara's precise deductions for increased household resource utilization and administrative oversight, went into a modest savings account. I bought my own art supplies, paid for my bus pass, and saved for the art classes I longed to take at the Verdant City Art Institute. Alara, of course, had an itemized list for every expense. "Self-sufficiency builds character," she declared, and Arthur, as always, said nothing. Dinner was a silent ritual at precisely 7 o'clock. Alara, ever economical, would prepare simple, wholesome meals that stretched over several days. Leftovers were not a concept, but a meticulous plan. The muted hum of the evening news filled the space, punctuated only by Arthur's occasional sigh or Alara's delicate clinking of cutlery. Once, when I was 15, I ventured to ask about my biological parents. The air in the room seemed to chill. They were unable to provide for you, Lyndon, Alara stated, her voice clipped. We offered stability when others could not. That is all you require to know. Arthur added, his voice barely audible. Some pasts are best left undisturbed, son. It was one of the rare times he used the word son without it feeling like a formality. Birthdays were acknowledged with a generic card, signed simply Alara and Arthur. Gifts were always practical. A new set of art pencils when my old ones wore down, a bus pass, a sturdy umbrella. The annual winter festival decorations came down promptly on December 26th. No sense in wasted energy on unnecessary adornments, Alara would rationalize. Now, every memory felt refiltered, tainted by the bitter truth. Alara's meticulous records, Arthur's distant politeness, their hushed conversations that abruptly ceased when I entered a room. Conversations I now understood were likely about the monthly provisions the Alabaster Grove Foundation checks. The puzzle pieces of my life, once scattered and confusing, were now aligning into a harsh, undeniable image. But there's a peculiar thing about growing up without warmth. You don't fully grasp what's missing until someone offers it, even in its absence. I believed all families were a series of calculated transactions, all homes temporary arrangements. That last part, at least, proved true. Lyndon, please sit. Alara had commanded that morning, her gaze fixed on the array of documents spread across the kitchen table. Now that you've reached your 20th year, the Foundation's provisions will cease. My stomach plummeted. What provisions? Arthur shifted in his seat, the sound of fabric on wood eerily loud. He was dressed for the botanical garden, a quiet escape into the world of chlorophyll and growth cycles. The Alabaster Grove Foundation stipend, he mumbled, his eyes avoiding mine. 1,500 units a month for 20 years. It was why we offered our home. The words struck me, sharp and precise, each one a separate wound. 1,500 units a month for 20 years. The arithmetic clicked in my mind even as my heart shattered. 360,000 units. That was my worth. We provided the Foundation's requirements, Alara continued, her voice as flat as the spreadsheets before her. Shelter, sustenance, education. The agreement is now complete. You must vacate the premises by midday. You're joking, I whispered, my voice raw. This is some cruel birthday jest, isn't it? Any moment, you'll present a cake, a gift. Your belongings are in the canvas bag, Alara interjected, pointing with a pen. Leave the house key on the counter, and the garden shed key, as well. I'm aware you've kept a spare. Of course, she knew. Alara knew every detail that might impact her meticulous accounting. I don't understand, I said, though a chilling clarity was beginning to dawn. You raised me. I called you mother, father. How can you simply discard me? You are a legal adult, Lyndon, Alara stated, finally looking up from her papers. We have no further obligation to house you. Indeed, your continued presence could complicate our tax filings. You've transitioned from an asset to a liability, now that the Foundation's support has concluded. A liability, an asset. I was a depreciating item, a ledger entry that had outlived its usefulness. Please, I begged, my knees aching as I knelt on the cool linoleum floor, the same floor I'd polished every Saturday for 2 decades. I'll find full-time work. I'll pay rent. Just a month to find my feet. Arthur stared at a spot on the wall, his gaze distant. Alara simply pointed at the clock. It is 9:47. You have until midday. Do not make this more difficult than necessary. I remained there, kneeling, for what felt like an eternity, searching for a flicker of compassion, a crack in their resolve. But Alara returned to her calculations, and Arthur rose to refill his teacup, stepping around me as if I were merely an obstacle. When I finally stood, my legs trembled. 20 years, I murmured. 20 years of calling you my parents. Does that mean nothing? You were well cared for, Alara replied, her voice unwavering. 3 meals a day, appropriate clothing, a robust public education, medical and dental care as stipulated by the Foundation. You received everything you were entitled to. What about love? The question was barely a breath. Alara's fingers paused on the calculator keys, a brief, almost imperceptible hesitation. Love, she said, her voice flat, does not balance ledgers, Lyndon. I retreated to my room, the space that had been mine for 2 decades. The walls were bare, devoid of personal touches. Alara didn't believe in frivolous decoration. The furniture was basic, functional, likely acquired through some efficient bulk purchase. My belongings were already sorted. My sketches, a few cherished books, and the locket went into the canvas bag. My small desk, my basic lamp, these remained, for they were theirs. In the bathroom, I stared at my reflection. Brown eyes, light brown hair, average build. I looked unremarkable, easily overlooked. Was that why it had been so effortless for them? Because I was generic enough to blend into their beige world without disrupting the palette? Back in the kitchen, Alara was on the phone. Yes, the guest room will be available this afternoon. 450 units a month, utilities included, first month and security deposit required. She was already renting my space before I'd even left. Not another ward of the state, but a paying tenant. A true asset. Who were my biological parents? I asked, my voice cutting through her conversation. Alara covered the receiver. Does it truly matter? They relinquished you. We are doing the same. It seems a cyclical pattern. You know who they were? The foundation provided basic medical history for archival purposes. Nothing more was relevant to our arrangement. Our arrangement. That was my childhood. A precise, carefully managed arrangement. Arthur returned from the garden shed, a 20-unit note clutched in his hand. He pressed it into my palm without meeting my eyes. For provisions, he mumbled. Until you settle. 20 units. After 360,000, he offered me 20. I wanted to tear it, to hurl it back, but pride felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Time is up, Alara announced precisely at midday. She stood by the front door, holding it ajar. We have appointments. I picked up the canvas bag, surprisingly light for carrying a life's worth of meaning. As I walked past her, I paused. Did you ever, even for a single moment, consider me your son? Her gaze, those still, gray eyes, held no warmth. I considered you my responsibility. I fulfilled that responsibility completely. The door closed behind me with a definitive click. I heard the deadbolt turn, then the chain engage, then nothing but the gentle hum of Elysian Heights resuming its day. Lawn mowers droned. Children laughed in the distance. Families being families in ways I still couldn't comprehend. I stood on the sidewalk, holding my canvas bag, 20 units in my pocket, and nowhere to go. The brochure for the Haven Collective, given to me by Alara, was already damp with sweat in my palm. Its address was in Verdant City, a long walk away. My phone buzzed with a text. Alara, you are no longer on our family data plan. Service terminates at midnight. Adjust accordingly. Even my phone was on a timer. Everything about my existence in their lives had been scheduled, budgeted, and was now being efficiently terminated. I started walking. Last Tuesday, the world shifted on its axis. I was sitting on a park bench in Verdant City's central square, a familiar haunt where the old oak trees provided dappled shade and the city's pulse felt a little less frantic. 3 months of navigating the city's margins had taught me the delicate dance of survival. Shower every day at the communal facilities, keep my clothes meticulously clean, maintain an air of composure even when despair gnawed at my insides. A man in a charcoal suit approached, his gait purposeful yet unhurried. My body tensed. A suit often heralded unwelcome news in my new reality. But this man moved with a different kind of gravity, like he was on a quest and had just found his destination. Lyndon, he asked, his voice calm, as he presented a finely embossed card. My name is Silas Thorne. I'm a private investigator. My first instinct was to flee, but a weary resignation had settled in my bones. Depends who's asking. Silas sat beside me on the bench, his expensive suit unheeding of the dusty surface. This small, unpretentious gesture resonated deeply. I've been searching for you for a long time. Your biological father commissioned me years ago, but your adoption records were sealed. When you applied for those art classes, your name finally surfaced. Biological father. The word sparked an almost painful jolt through me. Theodore Vance, Silas continued, his voice softening. He's been looking for you since the day he signed the adoption papers. I latched onto the past tense. Why isn't he here? Silas's expression clouded with a gentle sorrow. I'm sorry to deliver this news this way, but he passed away last week. A sudden heart attack. He was still searching for you when it happened. The world tilted. I'd spent countless nights conjuring scenarios of a reunion, a moment when someone would finally seek me out. Now, that someone had, and he was already gone. Silas presented a tablet, displaying a photograph. This is him, Theodore Vance. I stared at the screen. My own face, aged 30 years. The same thoughtful brown eyes, the same quiet curve of the lips. But where my eyes held a weariness, his burned with a fierce determination. He stood before a towering glass building, Vance and Company. Enterprises etched elegantly above the entrance. Enterprises? I asked, a faint echo of Mrs. Marlowe's teasing about my entrepreneurial spirit. Founder and CEO, Silas confirmed. He built a thriving venture, specializing in sustainable energy. Never married, never had other children. He often said he couldn't, not until he found you. Why did he give me up? The question was a raw ache in my throat. Silas scrolled to another photo, older, faded. A young man, barely out of his teens, holding a tiny infant. He was 22 when you were born. Your mother, Eleanor Linden, passed away during childbirth. Complications no one foresaw. Theodore's family, wealthy and influential, convinced him he couldn't raise a child alone, that you'd have a better life with a stable, two-parent family. He signed the papers and regretted it within a week. A week. Rage, hot and sharp, flared within me. He regretted it in a week, and it took him 20 years to find me? He tried to reverse the adoption immediately, Silas explained, his voice even. But you'd already been placed with Alara and Arthur. The records were sealed. He spent 2 decades and millions trying to break through the legal labyrinth. Lawyers, private investigators, I'm the 18th he hired. Silas produced a thick folder. 3 years ago, I found you. Found the Alaras. But when Theodore tried to make contact, they threatened legal action. Restraining orders, harassment charges. They knew he was searching for you, Linden. They knew, and they never told you. The anger, cold and searing, consumed me. Alara and Arthur had known. Someone had longed for me, desperately, and they had concealed it, for the sake of their monthly stipends. He was supposed to be here, Silas continued, his voice heavy. The plan was to approach you on your 20th birthday, when their legal authority ceased. But the heart attack, it happened 2 days before. 2 days before. While I was stacking books at the literary nook, planning how I might gently broach the subject of my future with Alara and Arthur, my father was dying, still trying to find me. There's more, Silas said, rising. We need to go to his attorney's office. There are documents, decisions to be made. Decisions? I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. I live out of a canvas bag. What decisions could I possibly make? Silas looked at me with a profound empathy. Theodore Vance left everything to you. Every asset, every share, every penny. You are about to become one of the wealthiest individuals in the region. I stood there, amidst the gentle rustle of leaves in the park, trying to process his words. I don't understand. He didn't know me. I could be anyone. You are his son, Silas stated simply. That was enough for him. He used to say, I don't need to know him to love him. I've loved him since the day I lost him. The drive to the attorney's office was surreal. Silas's car was a sanctuary of polished leather and hushed classical music, a stark contrast to the rattling buses I'd become accustomed to. We passed through neighborhoods I'd only ever glimpsed from a distance, gleaming skyscrapers, manicured estates. He spoke of you constantly, Silas confided, as we drove. Every business meeting, every major deal, was prefaced by an update on the search. His board of directors often joked that Vance and Company Enterprises was merely an elaborate, 2-decade-long funding mechanism for finding Lyndon Vance. Did he know anything about how I was living? He knew about the Alabaster Grove Foundation stipends. It tormented him, knowing they were profiting from your existence. He tried to offer them 10 times what the foundation was paying, just for contact. They refused, claiming any interaction would be detrimental to your well-being. Detrimental to my well-being. Alara had used my welfare as a shield, while meticulously calculating my financial worth. The attorney's office was on the 40th floor of a building I'd walked past 100 times, but never dared to enter. The elevator ascended, a swift journey into an entirely different realm, where shoes gleamed, clothes fit perfectly, and futures were not left to the caprice of strangers. Ms. Anya Sharma, Theodore's attorney, a woman with kind eyes and a sharp intellect, greeted us in a conference room with panoramic windows overlooking Verdant City. Somewhere down there, my canvas bag likely lay discarded in a locker at the Haven Collective. "Mr. Vance," she said, and I almost corrected her, almost said that wasn't truly my name. But what was? Miss Sharma placed a sealed envelope on the polished table. Theodore's name, written in a shaky hand, was scrawled across it. "Your father wrote this the morning he died. He insisted it be given to you, unopened, by your hands alone." My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. Inside, a handwritten letter on elegant stationery and a small, antique brass key with an address tag. The letter, 3 pages long, was filled with a frantic, hurried script, as if he knew time was running out. "My son, if you are reading this, then I failed to find you in time. But at least you have been found. Your mother, Eleanor Linden, died bringing you into this world. She was the light of my life. You have her smile, though I suppose you wouldn't know that. I was 22, overwhelmed, and foolishly susceptible to my family's counsel. They convinced me that a young, single father could not provide what you needed. They had already contacted an adoption agency, already found the perfect family. I signed the papers in a haze of grief and confusion. I regretted it within a week. I had to pause, the words blurring before my eyes. Miss Sharma quietly pushed a box of tissues towards me. By then, you were gone, sealed behind legal walls I spent 2 decades trying to breach. The Alabaster Grove Foundation considered the matter closed. I tried everything. Legal challenges, private investigators, even attempting to bribe courthouse clerks, a venture that cost me a fortune in legal fees when I was caught, but it was worth the attempt. The key opens a vault at the address below. Inside is everything I gathered while searching for you. Every birthday gift I bought, but couldn't give. Every letter I wrote, but couldn't send. And the truth about why finding you became my life's unwavering purpose. The letter continued. Your mother's maiden name was Linden. I named the company's newest sustainable energy park after you, the Linden Resilience Park, inaugurated the day you would have turned 16. It is our most groundbreaking project. I built this company, this empire, hoping that one day its reach would be vast enough for you to hear me calling. Every contract I signed, every deal I brokered, I did it thinking, perhaps this will generate enough to break through the silence. I am sorry I wasn't strong enough to keep you. I am sorry I wasn't fast enough to find you. But I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. The fortune I leave you is not merely an inheritance, my son. It is 2 decades of apologies, expressed in the only language I had left. Silas drove me to the vault's address, an unassuming building in Verdant City's industrial district. From the outside, it was just another warehouse. Inside, past 3 layers of security, was a room that stole my breath. The walls were covered, floor to ceiling, with the tangible evidence of his relentless search. Private investigator reports, thousands of them, meticulously filed. Age progression photos, showing what I might look like at 5, 10, 15. Every Linden in the country had been investigated. There were newspaper clippings from my high school, my name circled in red ink in tiny print in an honor roll announcement, with "Is this him?" scrawled in the margin. He had been so close, so many times. In the center of the room stood 18 years of birthday presents, each carefully wrapped and labeled. A small wooden train for age 4, with a note, "Every boy deserves to build worlds." A worn leather-bound book of classical poetry for age 9. "I hope you find beauty in words, my son." A set of keys for a classic convertible for age 16. Your first car, just like the one your mother loved. The car, Silas later told me, was still in storage, waiting. But it was the desk that truly unraveled me. Hundreds of letters, organized by date. I picked one at random, from when I was 13. Linden, you are 13 today. I wonder if you enjoy literature. I love to lose myself in stories at your age. I hope someone is teaching you to find joy in simple things. I hope someone tells you they are proud of you. I am, even from afar. I received your school photo today, purchased from a company that sells yearbook images online. You look serious, thoughtful. Your mother had that same expression when she was concentrating. I carry your photo everywhere. The board thinks I am eccentric, pulling out a school photo of a boy I've never met during million-dollar negotiations. But you ground me. You remind me why I am building this. All of this is for you. Silas stood quietly by the door as I read letter after letter, year after year, a father's love documented in ink and paper. Then I found the folder that changed everything. Failed adoption recovery Alara/Arthur family. Inside were legal documents, correspondence, emails. Theodore had found me 3 years ago. He tried to make contact, sent letters, even appeared at the Alara/Arthur home once. They had responded with lawyers, threatened harassment charges, filed for a restraining order. There were photos of my beige house, of me walking to school, getting into Arthur's modest car, working at the literary nook. My father had been watching from a distance, legally barred from approaching. One email from Alara to Theodore's lawyer was highlighted. Mr. Vance's contact attempts are disruptive to our family structure. Lyndon is thriving in our care and does not require the confusion of a biological parent's interference. Any further attempts at contact will result in criminal charges. The monthly stipends we receive from the Alabaster Grove Foundation are irrelevant to this matter and should not be construed as motivation for maintaining custody. She had known. She had known everything and kept it from me to preserve her monthly checks. At the bottom of the folder was a USB drive labeled Final Message. Silas produced a laptop, and we plugged it in. Theodore's face appeared on the screen, dated a week before his death. He looked exhausted, yet resolute. Lyndon, tomorrow I am flying to Verdant City. Silas has finally confirmed you will be 20 and free from their control. After 2 decades, I am finally going to meet my son. I've practiced what to say 1,000 times, but I know I will just weep. I hope you can forgive a young man's fear. I hope we can build something from the time we have left. I have a reservation for your birthday dinner. Somewhere special, somewhere that serves that rich chocolate cake everyone seems to adore on birthdays. I never got to see you blow out candles, make wishes. I have 20 years of wishes saved up. All of them are just variations of the same thing. Bring my boy home. I love you, son. I am coming for you. This time, nothing will stop me. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m., March 12th. He died at his desk 6 hours later, planning our reunion. Silas finally spoke. The paramedics said he was holding a plane ticket to Verdant City and your photograph when they found him. I sat in that vault, surrounded by 2 decades of love I never received, gifts I never opened, letters I never read. The full weight of what had been stolen from me not just by Alara and Arthur, but by fate, by cruel timing, by a heart that gave out 2 days too soon settled upon me. There's one more thing, Ms. Sharma said, producing her tablet. The estate value. Vance & Company. Enterprises, valued at 95 million units. 4 sprawling estates across the region, each fully paid. A private nature reserve off the coast, which he acquired the year you turned 10, and named Lyndon's Haven. Various investments and liquid assets totaling another 35 million. It is all yours, Mr. Vance. Mr. Vance. She had called me Mr. Vance. For the first time in my life, I had a name that someone had truly wanted me to have. I am 21 now, CEO of an energy company I am still learning to navigate. The board members who watch Theodore's relentless search have become my mentors, sharing stories of a father I never got to know. They speak of his unwavering determination, how he would fly to distant states on weekends, pursuing any faint lead. How he kept a desk drawer filled with my school photos, purchased from online public records. How every major business decision was followed by the question, will this help me find my son? The estates felt overwhelming at first, too vast, too silent, filled with the presence of a man I never met, yet who loved me more than anyone ever had. I kept one the house Theodore lived in, leaving his study untouched. His favorite tea mug still sits on his desk. His reading glasses mark his place in a book on adoption law reform he will never finish. Sometimes, I sit in his study, surrounded by his handwritten notes about me, and talk to him as if he is there. I tell him about my day, about the company, about the life he made possible. The other 3 estates have been transformed into transitional homes for young adults aging out of the foster system, and for homeless youth. The Haven Collective, where I spent 3 months eating lukewarm stew and sleeping on a cot that smelled of antiseptic, now receives a substantial monthly donation, ensuring no one goes hungry or cold. The director once asked why I didn't want my name on anything. I told her the truth. It's not charity when you've been there. It's simply paying a debt to the universe. Silas still works for me, but his role has evolved. Now, he helps me find other lost children, other biological parents searching for the children they lost to the system. We've reunited 14 families so far. Last month, we found a 17-year-old artist whose biological mother had been searching for 12 years. I paid for their reunion dinner, watching from a discreet distance as they wept over untouched pasta, making up for lost time. That is what Theodore never got. That moment, that chance to shed tears of joy over a birthday cake, to bridge the chasm of lost years. I visited Alara and Arthur once, just once. They had moved to a smaller apartment in a less affluent part of Verdant City, a place with chipped paint and a weary air. Arthur was working longer hours at the botanical garden, his shoulders slumped. Alara had taken on bookkeeping for a small local business at night. Without my monthly stipend, their meticulously calculated life had begun to unravel. "We gave you what you needed," Alara said when she opened the door, her face devoid of surprise, her eyes not inviting me in. "No," I replied, standing in their doorway, wearing a suit that cost more than their monthly rent. "You gave me what the foundation paid you to give." But Theodore, who never met me, gave me everything. He gave me a love that didn't require payment. Arthur appeared behind her, looking older, more defeated. "Lyndon, we heard about your good fortune. If you could see your way to assisting us. We did raise you for 20 years. The audacity should have ignited a furious blaze within me. Instead, I felt only a profound, aching pity. You raised me for 360,000 units in stipends. By my calculation, you've been paid in full." I left them there, in their calculated poverty, and never looked back. The private nature reserve, Lyndon's haven, remains mostly untouched, exactly as Theodore left it. He'd built a small, elegant lodge there, filled it with things he thought I might appreciate. Art books, a telescope, a vintage vinyl collection. He was preparing for any version of me, ready to love whoever I turned out to be. I go there when the weight of running his company feels too heavy, when I miss the father I never met. I sit on the dock he built and watch the constellations he might have shown me, catching nothing, just existing in a space he created for us to share. Mrs. Marlowe, at the Literary Nook, was right all those years ago. I did have a way with words, a connection to stories. Literally in my DNA, a genetic inheritance from a father who turned sustainable energy into an empire while searching for his lost son. But more than that, I have his determination, his refusal to surrender. Every signature I sign as CEO, I sign as Lyndon Vance, honoring the man who never stopped looking for me. The Theodore Vance Benevolent Fund has placed 50 children with carefully screened families this year, real families, who desire children, not checks. We cover all expenses, but the funds go into trust accounts for the children, not the caregivers. I interview every family personally. I know what questions to ask, what subtle untruths to discern. I understand the profound difference between a house and a home, between caretakers and parents, between obligation and unconditional love. Last week, I received a letter from one of the children we placed, a 7-year-old named Maya. She wrote in crayon, "Thank you for my family. They read me stories every night. They say, I love you even when I spill milk. They put my drawings on the refrigerator." That letter sits on my desk, beside Theodore's final message to me. 2 generations of love, one lost, one found. The wealth doesn't erase 3 months of cold showers and shelters or 20 years of emotional starvation. It doesn't bring back the father who loved me from a distance, who died 48 hours before he could hold me for the first time since I was 6 months old. But it does mean I can ensure no child experiences what I did. It means Theodore's love, 20 years in the making, continues to ripple outward, finding lost children, building real families, forging the connections that Alara and Arthur proved cannot be bought. Because that's what love looks like. Not a monthly stipend or a calculated exchange. Not a contract fulfilled or an obligation met. Love looks like a man spending 20 years and millions of units just to speak 3 words he never got to utter. "Welcome home, son." Love looks like hundreds of unopened birthday presents waiting in a vault. Like letters written to a ghost. Like a private investigator hired to watch from a distance because the law forbade a closer approach. Like building an empire as a beacon, hoping your lost child might see the light and find their way home. Theodore Vance died believing he had failed. He hadn't. He had spent 20 years teaching me what it means to love someone unconditionally, to never give up, to build something beautiful from loss and longing. He taught me that real parents aren't the ones who keep you for the checks, but the ones who would spend everything, sacrifice everything, just to know you're okay. I keep his final video on my phone. I watch it when I need to remember what love looks like. My father, exhausted from 2 decades of searching, holding a plane ticket to come find me, saying he loves me, saying he's coming, saying this time nothing will stop him. Death stopped him, but love didn't. Love found a way. Love always does. Some nights, I dream about that birthday dinner he planned, the rich chocolate cake he ordered, the candles I would have blown out. In my dreams, he makes it to Verdant City. We sit across from each other at that restaurant. 2 strangers with the same face, the same eyes, the same quiet determination in our souls. He tells me he's sorry. I tell him I understand. We both cry over chocolate cake that tastes like redemption. Then I wake up in his house, running his company, living his dream of bringing me home. And I realize the dream came true, just not the way either of us imagined. I'm home now, in a house built by love, in a life funded by determination, in a future he created while refusing to let me go. Alara and Arthur gave me up for free the moment the checks stopped coming. Theodore never gave up, not even when his heart stopped beating. That's the difference between a transaction and a transformation. Between housing and home. Between people who kept me and the one who loved me. Welcome home, son. I finally made it, Dad. I finally made it home.